In the book of Exodus, we learn of God leading his people, the chosen people, the nation of Israel, out of slavery in Egypt into the promised land. Or, I guess, to the promised land. They don't necessarily get into the promised land, and we'll get to that in a second. But it starts with the birth and life of Moses, born as a baby, as most people are, put in a basket in a river because the Pharaoh had ordered all Israelite children to be killed. Moses is saved by Pharaoh's daughter, brought up into the palace, lived his life there in the palace. Kills an Egyptian, flees, and is found on Mount Sinai by God, where he's challenged with the task of going back to Egypt, telling Pharaoh, God says, let my people go. Pharaoh laughs Moses off. God then sends plagues over the nation of Egypt, and Pharaoh finally says, leave. I don't want you around here. Your God is nuts. That's an actually paraphrase, but that's basically what he says. So Moses tells the Israelites, we're leaving. We're going to the promised land, the land that God has given us, a land flowing with milk and honey. All that we've ever dreamed of is going to come at this moment. So they load up all that they've got, all their possessions, and they set out on their journey. Now Pharaoh at this time, his heart is hardened, and he chases after the Israelites. And as he's pursuing them, the Israelites see it coming, and they reach the Red Sea, and they think, all is lost. We're doomed. And Moses holds out his staff over the Dead Sea, and it parts. The Israelites cross over. And as they get to the shores of the Red Sea, as soon as they get over on dry land again, Israelites are being still pursued. The Egyptians get in the middle of the Red Sea, and the walls come tumbling down, and they're wiped out, and God's chosen people are free. And they go on their journey to the promised land. Now, one would think after seeing all these plagues that were brought upon Egypt, and seeing the Red Sea be parted, and them saved from the Egyptian armies, you would think that they would be happy. But they complained, they whined, and they cried. And it was better when we were in Egypt, that we have no food, we have no water, our pits' heads are falling off. That's a line from a movie called Dumb and Dumber, one of the greatest films of our lifetimes. They're grumbling about everything. They're complaining. They want it now. They want this land in their possessions at this moment. They want to go back. At least we had onions. We had to work, and we were slaves, and we were mistreated and murdered, and life was miserable, but at least we had food. So God brings them food. He brings them water from a rock. He gives them all these things. He leads them by a fire by night and a cloud by day, and he shows how powerful he is, and performs all kinds of miracles on the way, and they still do nothing but whine and cry and complain. And Moses finally reaches Mount Sinai, and he goes up on top of the mountain where he's in the presence of God. And the people, after a couple of days, say, Moses has left us. Let's make an altar to the God that brought us out of Egypt. And they build a golden calf. These people are ridiculously stupid, but we're just like them. So they built this golden calf. Moses comes down. He smashes the 10 Commandments, makes him drink the water that is now made out of the ashes and the gold dust that was from the golden calf, and the people are slaughtered, and life is miserable, and they're told that you're not going to go into the promised land because you disobeyed God, and life's miserable, and you weren't patient. There's that word, patience. Remember that word. You're not patient. You didn't wait for God's timing to do all this stuff, and they wander around in the wilderness until the last of the evildoers, the disobedient ones, the rebel rousers are gone. And it's their grandkids and their kids are now there. And Moses, for his part, isn't even allowed to go into the promised land. But they finally reach the promised land, and Moses sees it with his own eyes, but he can't go in because he was disobedient in leading God's people. But finally, after years of wandering, after years in slavery, after years of being miserable, they reached the land that God told them, this is yours. Patience is an interesting thing. We want what we want, and we want it now. We live in a society where everything is at our fingertips. If I can't find it at the store, I get online, and I immediately can find it on Amazon, and I can get it here in 2 days. That's the way we are. There's no waiting. We want answers. We text somebody, we call somebody, we have cell phones in our hands at all times. I remember back in the days where you had no communication. Those were the days when everything wasn't at our fingertips. We learned to wait. And that's the problem, is God's given us all these promises and we want them all now. We see the world as it is right now and we say, this place is evil and wicked. God, when are you coming? When are you returning? And we want him to come now and take care of this now. But he says, it's in my timing, not yours. When Jesus departed, he told the disciples that I'm going to come back and get you and take you to where I am also. And when he ascended, the disciples and those gathered around stood there waiting, looking up into heaven. And finally the angels appeared to him and said, he didn't mean right now. He gave you a job to do. Go do it. He'll come get you when the time is right. But that goes back to that patience and waiting. We want it. James starts out his letter the same way he ends it. James chapter 1 tells us, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Perseverance produces endurance. And that's where we're at today. Perseverance, endurance, patience. Sometimes we want to run to the end of the finish line and get to there. But God says you've got to go through the hard times and you've got to be patient and wait. James chapter 5, verse 7, it says, be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and late rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. As an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast. You have heard of the steadfastness of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. But above all, my brothers, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you may not fall under condemnation. In this portion, James gives us the guidelines of patience. In the first verse, in verse 7, he gives us the patience of waiting. Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. And he gives us a great example. See how the farmer, he waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and late rains. You can't just plant and suddenly you have a crop. It takes patience and waiting for the time to be right. You get the rain, you get the sun, you get the nutrients that make that seed grow into what we have. But then he talks about patience in our faith. Verse 8, you also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Be patient in what you believe and why you believe it. Christ is returning. I mentioned earlier the disciples that looked onward waiting for Christ to return. He gave them a job to do, to go out and tell the world. In Matthew chapter 28, he tells us, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them the things that I've commanded you. And by doing so, he gives us our instructions to spread the gospels, to spread the good news, to tell the world about who he is and what he wants us to do for him. Now, he is returning. And he's coming back to get us. And we have to wait in faith, knowing that he is going to return. But we have a job to do while we wait. So be true to that faith. And complaining. Patience in complaining. Chapter 5, verse 9. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. When he does return, we will be judged. Don't be a whiner. Don't be a complainer. The Israelites complained all the way through their journey. We're hot, we're tired, we can't go no further, we're hungry, we have no food. It was better when we were slaves. No, you weren't. And God will provide. Don't complain. Life sometimes is miserable. I get that. But go back to what James said. Don't complain when you go through hard times. Know that God is pulling you through those hard times to make you stronger. doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And what doesn't kill you is because God is with you, guiding you along. Verse 10 and 11 tells us to have patience in our persecutions. As an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast. You have heard that of the steadfastness of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. In America, we don't know what persecution is because of our faith. We have no clue. We say that our religious freedoms are being infringed upon. Every Sunday morning, I stand at a pulpit in southern Indiana and I preach the gospel message. And not one person is threatening my life. I don't walk over to the church and fear that I'm going to be arrested and thrown in jail. There may be sometimes a time where that comes. Who knows? But there are Christians around the world that they can't walk to their church with their Bible in hand and think that they can go up and preach because they'll be murdered. They'll be arrested. Their family will be arrested. That's persecution. James, Paul, Peter, John, those men were persecuted. Stephen preached the gospel message and was stoned in the temple courtyard. That's persecution. And their faith has been rewarded in heaven. If you look through Hebrews chapter 11, you get the hall of faith. Men and women that went through hard times and struggles, and they came out at the end of it because they persevered and they had patience in knowing that even in their hard times, God was with them and protecting them. Have patience in those persecutions. And verse 12 gives us patience in our speech. But above all, my brothers, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you may not fall under condemnation. Be true to the word. Be true to your word. Peter confessed, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. If that is who you are, and you have accepted Christ as your personal Savior, and you have made that proclamation that Jesus is Christ, the Son of the living God, then what comes out of your mouth should be lifting up God. So be patient in those words. Ephesians 5:4, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. And throughout scriptures, Paul gives us, be careful what comes out of your mouth. James himself, earlier in this book, talked about the tongue as a dangerous weapon. Let your speech be filled with joy and love and peace and patience and knowing that God is in control. Now, to sum all of that up, I want to turn to Psalm 37. David writes this, and I think it's a great testament of what patience looks like and why we have patience. Because through all of it, God has a plan. When you looked at the Israelites, they whined and they cried, and they were fearful, and they turned their backs on God, but he was always faithful with them. Because he told them, I am going to take you to the promised land. I'm going to give you all that you've ever desired because it's in my plan and my will. And David writes this in chapter 37 of Psalms. Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your ways to the Lord and trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. For the evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. In just a little while the wicked will be no more. Though you look carefully at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant peace. The wicked plots against the righteous and gnashes his teeth at him. But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he sees that his day is coming. The wicked draw the sword and bend their bows to bring down the poor and the needy, to slay those whose way is upright. Their sword shall enter their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. Better is the little that the righteous has than the abundance of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholds the righteous. The Lord knows the days of the blameless, and their heritage will remain forever. They are not put to shame in evil times. In the days of famine they have abundance. But the wicked will perish. The enemies of the Lord are like the glory of the pastures. They vanish. Like smoke, they vanish away. The wicked borrows but does not pay back, but the righteous is generous and gives. For those blessed by the Lord shall inherit the land, but those cursed by him shall be cut off. The steps of a man are established by the Lord when he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be cast headlong, for the Lord upholds his hand. I have been young and now I am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken or his children begging for bread. He is ever lending generously, and his children become a blessing. Turn away from evil and do good. So shall you dwell forever. For the Lord loves justice. He will not forsake his saints. They are preserved forever. But the children of the wicked shall be cut off. The righteous shall inherit the land and dwell upon it forever. The mouth of the righteous utters wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice. The law of his God is in his heart. His steps do not slip. The wicked watches for the righteous and seeks to put him to death. The Lord will not abandon him to his power or let him be condemned when he is brought to trial. Wait for the Lord and keep his way, and he will exalt you to inherit the land. You will look on when the wicked are cut off. I have seen a wicked and ruthless man spreading himself like a green laurel tree, but he passed away. And behold, he was no more. Though I sought him, he could not be found. Mark the blameless, and behold the upright, for there is future for a man of peace. The transgressors shall be altogether destroyed. The future of the wicked shall be cut off. The salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their stronghold in the time of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them because they take refuge in him. Life throws many curveballs. It comes at us in all different angles. Keep moving forward. Don't be like the Israelites, grumbling and crying and whining about what they don't have. Hold on to what David held on to, knowing that God was in control. That last part of Matthew chapter 28, when Jesus gave the great commandment to go and tell everybody about him, he ended it with a great line. And lo, I will be with you always until the end of the age. And that's what patience and perseverance and endurance and steadfastness is all about. Getting through this world, knowing that the creator of this universe is in our palm. He's holding us right there, knowing that we are his, the sheep of his pasture, and he is guiding us and leading us. If, as David said in Psalm 37, we take refuge in him. Have a great week.